Welcome to Revenge with Lyra.
My sister got everything handed to her growing up. New cars, private school, designer trips, and all the attention. Then, at Thanksgiving dinner, she found out I had $26 million and had a complete meltdown in front of everyone. My uncle screamed, and my dad just stared. My name is Madison Cole, I'm 31. And if you think money fixes old scars, stay tuned. I grew up in a house where love was a competition disguised as parenting. My sister, Brielle, was the favorite. She was the gifted one, the one with ballet recitals, Ivy League tutors, and applause after every minor achievement. I was the quiet one, hand-me-down clothes, public school, and the kind of encouragement that sounded like obligation. When I graduated high school, Dad told me, "Be practical. You're not like your sister." So while Brielle studied art history in Paris, I worked double shifts at a diner, saving every tip in a coffee can labeled someday. Someday came in the form of a startup job in Austin. Data analytics. Long nights, ramen dinners, and zero expectations. I worked until my name mattered, and when the company went public, my stock options changed everything. Overnight, I became the thing my family never expected. The wealthy one. I didn't flaunt it. I kept quiet, sent Dad a new truck anonymously, paid off Mom's medical bills, even covered Brielle's overdue credit cards once. But secrets have expiration dates. So, on that Thanksgiving evening, when the conversation turned to who's successful now, my uncle joked, "Madison, still scraping by?" I smiled and said, "Actually, no." Then Brielle's boyfriend blurted it out. My Forbes profile, my company's acquisition, the number $26 million. The room froze. Brielle's wine glass slipped from her hand. Dad's fork clattered. And my uncle's voice thundered. 26 what? I just sat there, calm, cutting my turkey, knowing this dinner was about to expose more than envy. It was about to expose truth. The silence after my uncle's outburst could have shattered glass. Brielle's jaw hung open, her face twitching between disbelief and fury. 26 million? She repeated, louder this time, like saying it again might shrink the number. You. From that nerd job. I didn't flinch. Yes, I said simply, slicing another piece of turkey. That nerd job turned into a global analytics firm. I just didn't think it was dinner conversation. Mom tried to smooth things over, her voice trembling. "Brielle, sweetie, let's not make a scene." But Brielle was already standing, eyes blazing. A scene? Are you kidding me, Mom? She's been sitting here, quiet, while we helped her all these years, and she's been hiding millions. I set my fork down. "You helped me?" I asked. "You mean those years I was living out of a studio apartment while you drove a Range Rover paid for by Dad's loans?" Dad's head snapped toward me. "Watch your tone." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You all watched me struggle, and now you're shocked that I didn't stay there forever." Brielle slammed her hand on the table, eyes wet but furious. "You owe this family. You don't get to disappear and come back rich." My uncle jumped in, voice booming. "She's right, Madison. Family sticks together. You've got enough to make everyone comfortable. Why hide it?" Because it was never about comfort. It was about control. I leaned back, studying their faces, the people who'd once pitied me, dismissed me, and now saw me as a walking ATM. "You didn't ask how I earned it," I said. "You just want to know how much of it you can have." Brielle's voice cracked. "So, you're not even sorry? For what?" I asked. "For surviving without you?" That's when Dad finally spoke, soft, distant, like a man realizing the hierarchy he built had just collapsed. "Madison," he said quietly, "you should have told us." I met his gaze. "And you should have believed in me." The table went still. The turkey steamed in silence. And for the first time, they saw me. Not the forgotten one, the untouchable one. Brielle's meltdown escalated faster than I expected. She grabbed her napkin, threw it down, and shouted, "You always wanted to outshine me. You probably planned this." I stayed calm. "You can't plan success, Brielle. You work for it." "Oh, don't act so holy," she snapped. "You think money makes you better? You're still the boring one. The one who begged for attention growing up. Her words didn't sting, not anymore. They were old bullets, dulled by truth. Uncle Gary jumped in again, the self-appointed family judge. You know, Madison, maybe it's time you give back. Family supported you when times were tough. I turned slowly toward him. You mean that time you charged me rent to sleep in your basement after my car broke down?
Yeah.
I remember. The room froze again. Mom whispered, Madison, please, this isn't. No, I said, leaning forward. This is Thanksgiving. It's about gratitude, right? So thank you, Uncle Gary, for teaching me how to survive. Thank you, Brielle, for showing me what favoritism looks like. And thank you, Dad, for never believing I'd make it. Because you made sure I did. Brielle's eyes filled with tears, not from remorse, but humiliation. You're disgusting, she hissed. Money turned you cold. I shook my head. No, being ignored did. Money just gave me volume. Then, like a director cueing chaos, Dad finally stood. His voice trembled with anger. Enough. This family has been through too much to let greed destroy it. Greed? I echoed, standing too. I didn't come here asking for anything. But the second you found out what I had, everyone looked at me like I was a vault with legs. No one spoke. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. Finally, Mom whispered, Madison, maybe you should go. I nodded slowly, grabbed my coat, and said, You know what? You're right. I'll go. But remember, you pushed me out once for being too small. Don't push me out again for growing bigger. The door shut behind me with quiet finality. Inside, I left them with their turkey and their silence. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of finally speaking every truth I'd buried for years. The cold night air hit me like clarity. I sat behind the wheel, staring at my reflection in the dark window. For once, I didn't see the invisible daughter. I saw the woman who'd built something no one could take. But the family war didn't end that night. The next morning, my phone blew up, missed calls, group texts, guilt messages dressed as concern. The family chat thread was on fire. Brielle, can't believe you'd humiliate me in front of everyone. Uncle Gary, you should apologize. It's not right to flaunt wealth when people are struggling. Dad, let's talk privately. We can still fix this. Fix what? Their pride? Their illusion that I'd always stay beneath them? Instead of replying, I posted one quiet message in the chat. No one's entitled to the life I built. I owe no one an apology for thriving. Then I muted the group. An hour later, Dad showed up at my apartment. No call. No warning. He stood in the hallway holding a pie box, pretending it was a peace offering. Madison, he began, his tone softer now. Brielle's hurt. You embarrassed her. She embarrassed herself, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I just stopped pretending.
He sighed.
You've changed. I looked him in the eye.
No, Dad.
I just stopped living by your script. He opened his mouth to argue, but his voice faltered when he saw the framed newspaper article on my counter. Austin's youngest female tech executive to launch community grant program. His eyes softened, confusion flickering into pride he didn't want to admit. You're helping people now? Yes, I said simply. The kind who never got a chance. The kind you never believed in. He nodded slowly, unable to meet my gaze. Your mother would have been proud, he murmured, before walking out quietly. And for the first time, I didn't chase his approval. I just let him go. The following week, the story took on a life of its own. Not online, but inside my family's whispers. Brielle had gone full meltdown mode. She called mutual friends, sobbing that I'd ruined Thanksgiving, that I was heartless, that money had turned me cruel. The irony? Every person she called already knew my story. They'd seen the years I was left out of vacations, the birthdays forgotten, the way Dad used to introduce me as the other one. This time, no one bought her version. I was sipping coffee in my office when Rachel, one of our board members, knocked and handed me an envelope. These came for you, she said with a smirk. Inside was a typed letter, formal, desperate. Dear Madison,
We've talked as a family.
We believe things got out of hand. You've always been generous. We'd like to rebuild this relationship, privately. Also, Brielle's tuition balance is due this month, and your father thought maybe you'd want to help, given your success. Love, Mom and Dad. I laughed out loud, that dry, almost hysterical kind of laugh that comes when you realize nothing's changed. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted restoration of their comfort, not our connection. So I wrote back one paragraph, precise and final. Dear family, I've already paid enough for my silence, for my absence, and for your approval. I'm done paying for your comfort too. You can forward future requests to my lawyer. Sincerely, Madison. When I sent it, I expected guilt, maybe even regret. But what I felt was freedom, like debt forgiveness for the soul. That night, I met with my team about expanding the community grant fund. We renamed it the Someday Project, after that old coffee can I use to save tips in. And when I saw my name printed on the first check we issued to a single mother in Austin, I realized something profound. Family doesn't always share your blood. Sometimes it shares your scars and chooses to heal with you. The next month was calm, eerily calm, like the world had finally stopped testing me. But peace has a strange way of being interrupted by people who can't stand your silence. It started with a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, then again, and again. Finally, curiosity won. Madison? It's your uncle. The sound of his voice dragged up every dinner table argument, every lecture about respecting elders, while they disrespected me. What do you need, Uncle Gary? He hesitated. Look, kiddo, I just think you're taking things too far. Brielle's really not doing well. She's seeing someone about anxiety. She needs help. I'm not her therapist or her bank, I said flatly. You've got millions, he snapped. You can't just turn your back on blood. I almost laughed. Blood's just DNA. Loyalty is earned. He sighed heavily. You sound just like your father now, cold. I hung up before I said something colder. That night, Brielle posted another cryptic quote online. Some people only help strangers because it makes them feel better about ignoring family. It got dozens of likes from distant cousins who hadn't spoken to either of us in years. The cycle continued. Guilt, pity, blame, but I didn't bite. Instead, I doubled down on the Someday Project. We expanded to Dallas, sponsoring scholarships for girls in underfunded schools. Every check I signed was another layer of distance between who I'd been and who I'd become. One evening, I was reviewing applications when an email popped up. No subject line, no name. Just words. You're doing good things. Maybe one day, I'll deserve your forgiveness.
B.
For a second, I just stared. It wasn't manipulation this time. It was fragile, quiet, human. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. Because maybe that was the first honest thing my sister had ever said to me. And sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need a response. It just needs space to breathe. Winter faded into spring, and with it, the bitterness began to thaw. I still hadn't spoken to Brielle, but I stopped feeling anger when her name came up. That, I realized, was the real victory, not revenge, but release. Then one morning, my office assistant walked in, wide-eyed. There's someone here asking for you. Before I could respond, Brielle stepped through the door. She looked nothing like the polished golden girl I grew up resenting. Her hair was tied back messily, her eyes swollen from crying, and her designer bag replaced by a canvas tote. She stood there awkwardly, clutching an envelope. I didn't know where else to go, she said softly. I stayed seated, arms crossed. Why now? She took a shaky breath. Because I need to apologize while it still matters. I didn't say anything. I let her speak. I hated you, she admitted, voice trembling. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you survived what I couldn't. Dad made me feel like the world would fall apart if I wasn't perfect. You left that house and built something. I stayed and pretended. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter. Handwritten, tear-stained, messy. I lied about you because I wanted to feel important. I broke something I didn't know how to fix. I don't want your money. I just want peace. When I looked up, she was crying silently. I can't erase what I did, she whispered. but I can start telling the truth. I stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the skyline that used to feel like distance. You already did, I said quietly. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I hug you? It took me a moment, then I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Two grown women realizing the war had finally ended. And for the first time, I held my sister without resentment in my hands. 3 months later, our family gathered again, not for another tense dinner, but for something simpler. A community banquet. The Someday Project had officially funded its 100th scholarship. Reporters mingled, local leaders spoke, and I stood at the podium under the soft glow of stage lights, looking out at a crowd that included faces I never thought I'd see again. In the front row, Dad sat beside Brielle. He looked older, smaller somehow, but there was peace in his eyes. Brielle gave me a nervous smile, not the old smug one, but something fragile and real. When it was my turn to speak, I took a slow breath. I used to think success meant proving everyone wrong, I said. But now I know it's about proving to yourself that you can rise, even when no one claps. A quiet ripple of applause followed, soft and genuine. Afterward, Brielle approached me backstage. You were incredible, she said, her voice steady. You really built something beautiful. I smiled. So did you. You came back. That takes its own kind of courage. She hesitated, then handed me a small box. Dad wanted you to have this. Inside was Mom's locket, gold, old-fashioned, engraved with 2 names, Madison and Brielle. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. I thought he sold this years ago, I whispered.
He almost did, she said.
But I stopped him. I told him, maybe someday you'd want it back. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of resentment in my chest. Just gratitude, quiet, fragile, but real. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the hall was empty, I stood on the stage alone, holding that locket against my palm. All those years chasing approval, running from envy, carrying anger, they'd led me here. Not richer, just freer. I looked up at the lights and smiled. I didn't buy peace, I whispered. I earned it. And as I stepped down from the stage, I saw Brielle waiting by the door, waving, not as my rival, but as my sister.